Buon pomeriggio, eccoci qua al secondo appuntamento del programma culturale di Cersaie, Costruire, Abitare, Pensare. Siete benvenute e benvenuti. Stamattina c'è stata una prima conferenza di apertura, oggi pomeriggio, questa ora la trascorreremo insieme all'architetto David van Severen, che è qui presente con noi. Non ho molto da aggiungere, oltre a ricordarvi che il programma culturale continua anche nella giornata di domani. Potete vedere nel programma la presenza dei relatori di domani. E passo immediatamente la parola all'architetto Roberto Bosi, che introdurrà l'ospite di oggi pomeriggio. Grazie.
Grazie Maria Teresa. Grazie al Cersaie per avermi condiviso questa esperienza, nata prima dell'inverno, sui ragionamenti che spesso facciamo su chi coinvolgere in alcuni di questi incontri. I personally thank David for your time in Bologna and for taking and for sharing with us your work. Dopo ci sarà la traduzione simultanea, lui parlerà in inglese, quindi sarà più semplice per tutti. Si è ragionato su chi chiamare, abbiamo fatto un ragionamento anche territoriale, ci siamo accorti, io seguo più o meno queste esperienze da una decina d'anni, non c'era mai stato un architetto dal Belgio ospite, e tenete conto che sono stati ospitati circa 400 architetti e architette in questo contesto del Cersaie. Ma questo non è una cosa, un punto debole del Cersaie, anzi va riconosciuto che oggi siamo qua con uno studio della mia generazione, David è del 1978, il suo socio del 75 come me, e quindi riesco a comprendere bene la loro esperienza, la loro visione dell'architettura, no? La mia generazione è cresciuta con dei fari posizionati in varie latitudini, in vari luoghi, che ci hanno un po' guidato, le famose archistar, perché così erano, quindi penso a Rafael Moneo in Spagna, Alvaro Siza in Portogallo, Jean Nouvel in Francia, Frank Gehry negli Stati Uniti, Herzog de Meuron, il mio primo viaggio è stato a vedere Herzog de Meuron e il Guggenheim di Bilbao, era il 96, Tadao Ando in Giappone, Glenn Marcotte in Australia e Rem Koolhaas per l'Olanda, ma in realtà per tutta quell'area con difficili confini, tra quali anche il Belgio, che ha fatto scuola in parte al Belgio e in parte ai paesi nordici. Se pensiamo alla storia di Big, uno dei più contemporanei architetti, quando aveva lo studio Plot, derivava sempre dall'esperienza di Omar M. Koolhaas. Ho dimenticato Renzo Piano. Renzo Piano sicuramente non è mai stata la figura principale per gli architetti italiani, ma è l'architettura italiana nel mondo, per chiudere questo, diciamo, gruppo di riferimenti che abbiamo avuto. In tutto questo, negli anni '80, il Belgio viveva in un tepore, che è un tepore che oggi è un vantaggio. Di fatto, usando le parole di un critico belga, che nell'83 parlava già all'epoca di forte equilibrio tra normalità, eccezionalità, tra luogo comune e poesia. E questa è un po' la zona grigia in cui bisogna ricercare la qualità dell'architettura del Belgio. Dopo 20 anni di lavoro possono collezionare, questo la dice lunga sui riconoscimenti che hanno avuto a livello internazionale. La rivista spagnola 2G, numero 63, 2012, gli dedica un numero esclusivo. Poco dopo, nel 2016, il Croquis gli dedica un numero, oggi esaurito, numero 185. Proprio qualche mese fa è uscito il nuovo Il Croquis, che racconta il loro lavoro dal 17 al 24, ancora acquistabile. Ma non ci fermiamo alla Spagna, abbiamo Architettura Viva, siamo ancora in Spagna, scusate, gli dedica nel 2021 un numero monografico. In Giappone, Architettura Architecture e Urbanism A+, gli dedica il numero 591 nel 2019. E quindi uno studio ben identificato ormai nel panorama internazionale con solo 20 anni di lavoro. Ma come dicevo, il passaggio un po' chiave che c'è stato dalle Archistar a oggi lo denunciano alcune riviste internazionali, tra le quali Detail, che proprio quest'anno dedica un numero monografico al Belgio, non a uno studio di architettura, Architecture or Transformation in Flandres. La stessa Casabella quest'estate dedica un numero al Belgio, Everyday Belgium, quindi architettura quotidiana di tutti i giorni, quindi di nuovo anonima se vogliamo. Quindi col CERSAI, che fino all'altro giorno ha organizzato questi talk con le Archistar, perché i nomi che ho fatto prima tutti sono venuti qua negli anni a fare conferenze. Oggi con David, ma anche domani con Yamamoto, premio Pritzker, ma un Pritzker con non dico il sapore, ma con la visione completamente differente dai Rogers o Foster che abbiamo avuto da noi. Quindi da una parte sono contento di seguire questo cambio, e per la mia vita che mi appartiene, che è quella legata al mondo dei viaggi, ovviamente ho avuto occasione di essere guidato da questi grandi maestri, ma ora vi consiglio tutti, è l'anno del Belgio. Bisogna andare in Belgio per capire la qualità del quotidiano, che è di quello che i nostri paesi hanno bisogno. Detto questo, lo studio, come dicevo, a Bruxelles del 2022, due soci principali, Kersten Geers e David Van Severen, un ufficio impegnato nell'idea di architettura come impresa culturale volta a migliorare l'ambiente umano. A tal fine consideriamo i temi sempre più pressanti della sostenibilità, dell'approvvigionamento responsabile o dell'uso futuro come un catalizzatore per plasmare la nostra realtà urbana e sociale, e la forma architettonica come parte della soluzione. Uno studio composto da circa 40 membri, quindi uno studio direi medio, corretto a mio avviso, per cui come chiave di lettura nei lavori che ci mostrerà, ricordo, poi è sufficiente aprire il loro sito per capire il loro metodo di lavoro, che viaggia su due binari, che è quello della pratica e quello della ricerca. Entrambe hanno avuto esperienze, hanno esperienze universitarie molto importanti. Il suo socio attualmente è ordinario all'Accademia di Architettura di Mendrisio, ma ovviamente tengono corsi, mi diceva prima a pranzo, adesso ha un corso a Tokyo, hanno avuto ad Harvard, Columbia University, Yale, proprio per la freschezza e la voglia così di dare. A questo punto ricordo sempre normalità, eccezionalità, luogo comune, poesia, tenere saldi questo concetto, e ringrazio ancora e lascio la parola al nostro ospite. Grazie. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto. I didn't understand everything, but most parts. So I will speak in English. I'll try to move this a bit up. Yes, great. So thanks for this invitation. Also, Elena, to be part of this wonderful collection of speakers since so many years. So we're honored to be here. Today I will show you some projects that we've made. This is our office space in Brussels. As you can see, well, there's not so many people in the picture, but it's just important to show you also kind of a context in which we work. It's a very big office building, and we managed to let's say make our own office in there since we moved during COVID. And it's true, we're working more or less 40 people around many projects in Belgium, but also internationally. Some projects in Italy. We're working in Tuscany on a small project. We will show it to you. And also in Milan, we worked on the headquarters for Bottega Veneta. So, I mean, and there's many other countries, but I think what I want to show you today is and Roberto already mentioned you, this is the last publication that we published together with El Croquis. It's a work that is gathered from 2017 until 2024, till today, let's say. And it's a collection of a lot of projects. If I'm not wrong, there's like 27 projects in the book. Most of them are built, others are not going to be built because they're, let's say, they were supposed to be built but didn't go on. That's life, that's architecture. And others are still going to be built in the future. So, but when I had to think of this lecture and how to select projects for the Bologna lecture, I just come back from Japan, as Roberto mentioned, and there we somehow showed the croquis as a kind of set of projects. So I was like, why not using the same framework of this book that just been published to show you a collection of new projects of what we've been doing in the latest, let's say, 6 years or a bit more. And the weird thing is, the El Croquis has this title. Each time they give a title to the specific number, and this title they gave, Squaring the Circles. It was actually because of the let's say the text that had been written by Christophe van Gerwe about our work. And he chose that title, so that became also the title of the El Croquis. So I was like, okay, great, let's use this title today. And Squaring the Circles is something, I don't know if you know it in English, it means like you, somehow, it's like the impossible, a kind of a task that is so hard that it's almost like reaching the impossible. And well, I guess in a weird way, it's a good description also on how architecture somehow performs. It's like a task that tries to somehow frame, you could say, life in all its complexities, but of course it can never accomplish all these complexities. So by keeping a kind of level of abstraction, you can do that. I hope you will see that in our work. At the same time, the title, it says, well, there's a square and there's a circle, and it's just recurring figures in our work. And you will see I selected 7 projects from this El Croquis to show to you today, and they all have, let's say, a square or a circle. So the first project, and by the way, you saw this big, beautiful art piece on the left in the picture. It's Ed Roche. No, sorry, it's Matt Mulliken. I'm wrong. Matt Mulliken, American painter, made this beautiful work, which was also hanging in our office. But what I'm now talking about is this model you see in front of you. It's a house we built in Spain. A house, and it was also on the cover of the El Croquis, as you saw. It's quite famous by now. It's been in kind of many documentaries and in Netflix, and soon on Apple TV and so on. So anyway, it's become like a special known piece of architecture. But why is it, I don't know, maybe famous? There's this guy, and he bought a lot of land in this beautiful area in Spain called Matarranya. Matarranya, it's like the Tuscany, you could say, of Spain. And that means that it's like extremely hilly, beautiful agriculture, and there's actually pieces that are really national parks, so you can, natural parks that are protected. And in that area, our client, he bought a lot of land, and he had this idea to invite 10 architects, more or less, to make a house specifically for this site. A house based on actually just one idea, which was you can do what you feel you need to do. It's like a carte blanche of what is architecture. So when we got there, this is the view from our site actually, and what we were drawing is very soon, and that's because of many reasons, this kind of circle. A circle that is actually, if you are a bit more precise, it's a circle that takes this exact size of the plateau on which we were giving a site. So there's like small hills and mountains, and this area we visited was actually just flat, and it's like a table mountain, more or less, and then drops down, so like a plateau. And that was actually, for us, the immediate reason to design this circle, almost like measuring that place and looking for the edges of that site. Collages we made at the time, so it's a house, but it's also what is a house, actually. A house can be many more things than just, a box and with a few rooms. It's an idea of a perimeter that somehow measure a territory. It's a line, it's thin, but it gives you some shelter. Another collage. It's very transparent. It was a kind of a challenge to build architecture in that enormously beautiful landscape. So this is what it finally got to, and this is actually a picture from El Croquis. It's taken with a drone, of course, but it summarizes in a way very well what we try to do there. And from the air, everything looks very simple and very calm, and of course, it is still like that. But it was a whole process in how to get there. And I want to show you also how it's designed. The plan is actually this circular, well, it's a perfect circle of 45-meter diameter with a thickness of 4.5 meters. It's a roof of that size that covers so a whole area of territory, you could say. And this is the house. So you live under a roof of 4.5 meters wide. At the same time, sometimes under that roof, there's a moment where you can, let's say, have a bit of more comfort. You can enclose it a bit. You can have a piece of furniture that gives you some extra comfort, like a bed or a kitchen or a bench or a pool. And that makes you the house. So you can see the house is actually a circle, but there's an inscribed square in there. And the square defines these segments that you can see each side, east, north, west, south, let's say. It's more or less the same orientation. And each of them are different parts that organize, let's say, the house. There's a main living room under there in the image. There's bedrooms, master bedroom, children bedroom, if you want to call it like that. It's, of course, much more free. And there's a pool house on that side. And the gray area is the pool. And in section, you see that this house looks for the edge of this flat area and just drops down immediately after the house is there. But the inside of the circle is the same nature as the outside. It's just been claimed by the house itself. And just to give you a bit more ideas, so the house is organized in these wedge shapes. These are the real interiors, and this is, for instance, the kitchen and the living room, where you have a few kitchen elements, a table, a fireplace, and each of these fixed pieces of furniture are all connected to the straight line which has columns, just the supporting columns of the roof. And so there's this level of, let's say, fixing things and letting things free again. So on the edge, the house. And sometimes, and that's, you will see on the roof, there's these elements. Because what I didn't tell you yet is that each of the houses, and there's only 2 built by now, but this house is fully autonomous. So there's no electricity, no water, no gas, no energy arriving in the site. So everything has to be made by the house on site by itself. So this is an image from let's say the hill, looking up to the house, where you see this circle passing, where you see how the roof is already there, where you see some things on the roof, you see a glass facade, you see something curved. But actually the house, as I said, is this circle, and you can live on it, and the sun turns in it. The weather, it's a beautiful area. The views are all around, of course. And that's how life unfolds, let's say, in that figure. Moments that are extreme, let's say, where you can sleep totally in the open nature with these weird objects above you. These objects are actually, in this case, this is the pallet heater, so it's the heating installation that is actually making the heat sometimes that the house needs, or the cooling. This is a picture from this is the living room area, where we took away the walls, which is possible, I will show you later. But you see over the living room towards the pool area, the pool house, let's say, and which is entirely open as well. And on top of that, again, these volumes. The volumes are, in this case, batteries and a big water reservoir. The pool, where you see that sliding facade suddenly appears. That's the bedroom. But you see that all the inside-outside relations are totally different. There's no real typical boundaries anymore. The house is a kind of collage of how to survive in this kind of wilderness. And that's the detail. The detail is an important one. So we have this big concrete roof hovering above this place. And it's been supported by steel beams, a row of 9 steel beams, making 8 frameworks of each time on the 4 edges that support that roof. You see that steel beam. And that beam we use to put the glass, let's say, the straight line is a glass facade looking between the 2 elements. On the outer edge, and that's maybe important to say, there's this curved line, and that's as well an enclosed facade, but that's a very light, material. It's a kind of a hybrid between polycarbonate and stretch aluminium that give you the possibility to make enormous surfaces that are actually mobile. You can see it here in the section. So there's the water reservoir, there's the straight line of glass, and on the outside there's this almost like a big gate. They're 26 meters long. You can roll around the house in a rail. Again, you see how that works. So again, it's still a bit mysterious for you probably to understand now. The water reservoir, we worked with an artist here who was painting the water reservoir. So all these things are very important for us, that all the layers of, let's say, what make the architecture, even the machinery, becomes part of let's say, the architecture and is visible. But here you can see this facade. The the polycarbonate hanging on the edge of the house, and in wheels, like in the old barns, you have these big gates that hang on wheels. The same system here, where you can just by hand push them away and make it all open. So this is, for instance, a bedroom area where you can see when it's totally closed, it encloses you with a kind of a minimum of essential enclosure, but then you can slide it entirely open and you can see that the mountain is already coming into the bedroom. This is, of course, a house where the elements, since it's so on its own and it has to kind of survive in this beautiful landscape, you need all these moments of layering, of adaptation, because the sun, it turns in the house, but also it's of course that beauty that makes it essentially worth staying there, and the sun setting, the kitchen, as you can see it opened here, overlooking the beautiful mountains of Mataragna. In the night, it changes again until even, this is a picture when there was a full moon taken, and you can see the serenity, basically, of that house just in that landscape and how it performs. So this is a very good example, I suppose, of squaring the circle, in the sense that it's literally a circle, the house, and there's a square row of columns that support that circular roof. So this project, next project, and so there's 7 projects, I'll try to go quite fast, is in Belgium. This is a competition we won, I think, in 2013, if I'm right, because it was published as a project in the first croquis, but it's now published as a build project in the second croquis. And it's a crematorium, and it's like in Belgium, there's a lot of crematoria built right now. I guess the traditions from burials to cremations have shifted. I think it's more than 80% is now cremation. So these buildings that are actually machines, they become new institutions in Belgium, and they become almost like churches, because people are actually saying goodbye in the crematorium to their loved ones. So the whole shift, let's say, from the very machine-like before times to what this kind of buildings are today. They are like public buildings that have ceremonies for people that have deceased, and so that's a very special thing. And so when we won this competition, we had to think of that in a sense that it's a place for, let's say, sadness, of course, you lose your loved ones, but also of hope, of etc. Everything you could relate with a church. So when we made that building, we had to think of this work. It's a Lucio Fontana, and it's this kind of weird, kind of relief kind of work. It's sculptural. And why did we think of that? It's we worked together also with an artist, and he brought actually this work. It's because the roof of the building is very important in such a context. It's near the sea in Belgium, in Ostende, and it's a very flat area. So we had to work with lots of landscaping, which we did with Bas Metz. But also the building in itself needs to be kind of a place which can, let's say, accommodate people that have to deal with such a loss. And so, as I said, we worked a lot on the landscaping. That's together with the landscape architect. And inside somewhere that landscape is a building that is a square that is tilted along the road, so it's parallel with the road. the landscape takes a kind of linear rows of trees, which is very typical for that polder-like landscape. And then the walls in the building shift again like the tree lines. So this was a very important also on how to approach the building. And these collages we made at the time of the competition, just to show also it's a square, it's not only inclined in plan, but it's also tilted. So it has a very low side and it has a high side, where this square roof becomes actually almost like a still life, a tableau with elements. The work of Fontana of before becomes like a fifth facade of the building. It becomes like almost like a still life is a very beautiful word. In French you say nature morte, and I don't know the word in Italian, but I'm sure it's something like that. But the idea of life and then morte in the other language, we really like that. And so it's kind of a still life, like a painting that is always there, frozen in time. And somehow it also makes the building that is quite big, it's 45 by 45 meter, it gives through the roof all kinds of potential, let's say light, but also it hides the machines and it hides the chimney. There's a kind of mirage going on. And this is when it's built, so it's actually one of the first pictures from when it was built by Bas Prinsen. Actually all the pictures you will see is Bas Prinsen. And as I said, the plan is this tilted square with the rows of walls, you can say. And you go from, let's say, from the right side to the left side, so opposite to the reading sense, but through the building. So the entrance is on the right side, and then you go through these spaces that are quite long, through these walls, and they become like bigger and bigger. You will see that in this section. So, as I said, the roof is inclined and it's displayed to this painting or nature morte. But with these sculptural objects, they give light inside the bigger auditorium spaces, the ceremony spaces, but also hide somehow the chimney, which we also needed, of course. The model, as you saw in the previous pictures, shows that. But it shows also the plan inside and how it develops through these walls. And as you can see, even the doors that are in these walls, they become bigger and bigger and bigger, like almost like a metaphor, you could say, until you end up in the highest rooms, which are the machines, the ovens, the cremation part. Again, that image of the roof and how it is actually today. These are fresh pictures. We just got them yesterday from Bas Prinsen. So they are not in El Croquis. They're not shown yet. This is how it looks today, and it's also where you can see that the landscape is starting to really grow, and how that building, with its very simple inclined roof, makes a kind of outdoor perimeter and an abstract building, because there's apparently no glass. But this very awkward, let's say, curtain-like facades you see, they're actually the filters that filter light inside and outside. Because now we're inside in this first bay, and there you can see that we go from smaller doors to bigger doors, ceremony. There's these views each time through the landscape that follow the rows of trees, and that looked through what you could see was this gray facades. They're actually micro-perforated, corrugated aluminum plates. So you can see it's like a physical curtain, and it gives some kind of intimacy to the inside of the building. The same happens, so now we're one space further in these ceremonial spaces. So there's this big roof light, as you can see. There's a stage, and there's the seating. And behind it, there's this big window. a detail of that cupola, almost like an abstract skylight with this very funny white spray acoustics in it. And the same, there's a smaller auditorium, as you could see in the plan, and you can join them both together. But this, in many cases, there's 2 services, and this room is much more small and has a smaller roof light. It's the round one from there. And always there's this wall which you look at for the ceremony. Behind that wall, the family has a room to gather, to be more intimate, to say goodbye, to also leave the ceremony when it's too tough. And they are still part of that space, but they have this enormous perspective inside the landscape. And that's a detail of that window with the curtain in the perforated aluminium. Very hard to see. And it's even until the last room we designed this. This is the room where you would go and you have the oven to cremate, and people can go there. It's the highest room, and you can really say goodbye before, of course, cremation starts. Very important moment. Come out of the building, have the landscape again. The biggest doors on the, call it the logistical side, but it's also a side that is, let's say, human. And like that, the building starts to show itself almost as a landscape, a machine even, something human. Is it a church? Is it a crematorium? Is it something like a public building? It's awkward, but this is of course a place that today is more and more important for society. Okay. Next project. This is a project in Brussels, and so as I promised to you, I will only show squares and circles, but this is a special small project that a competition we won for a pedestrian bridge between 2 government buildings in Belgium at the first floor. So what we designed is this, and I will show you. So it's in the center of the city. And this is the federal parliament on the left underneath corner. You can see there's a little square that's actually the federal parliament of Belgium, where the federal government is doing their things. And then all these other buildings are part of it, actually. So they have the offices, they have the forum building, they have the meeting building, they have many buildings. And so part of that parliament building is this weird building with the 4 fingers, let's say. And opposite the street is a building where they hold big hearings, commissions. And so both buildings needed to be connected, and there was this competition in Brussels to connect both buildings with a bridge. And so, as you can see in the design or in the little white cutout, is that what our proposal was to make a kind of a ring hanging in the street between the 2 buildings, not to make a connection from A to B, from, let's say, one window of the other building to the other building, but to make a kind of a loop that has no actual direction. This is a reference, and I'm in the right place, I suppose, for talking about Renaissance, but Michelangelo, but many other Renaissance painters made these works. Tondo, they are called. Tondo is these smaller paintings, round ones, that you can fit everywhere on the wall between other works, let's say. They would not make a compository problem. And so we thought this was a very good reference. And so the project is called Tondo, Italian name. So this is how it is in the site. So between a building that is quite old on the bottom side, this is from 1870, that's for Belgium, that is quite old. And on the top, this is a new building from 2010, more or less. And so they need this connection. And so this is what we proposed. It's a bridge, it's a circle. It has, well, the building has switched the other side, but now the massive 1800 building is on the right-hand side, and the newer building is on the left-hand side. And it has already that difficulty to connect. The axis was not straight, so we had to make like a diagonal. So with the circle, we could avoid that. And this is a collage as we made it at the time for the competition. But the second problem was that even the wind or the levels were not the same, so there was this inclination that we had to address, not only, let's say, architecturally, but also for wheelchair accessibility. The bridge needed to have a certain percentage of slope. And with the circle, we could actually address that, because the circle had a kind of a detour, while with a straight line, it would not have been possible. Last collage we made. And there was a lot of structural working around this. We worked with Bollinger-Grohmann engineers. We really work with a lot. Actually, they have their office in our office for a while now. They're just moved out. But as you can see, that bridge is a whole thinking on how structure works. And the main structure is actually in the roof of that section. It's a cassette, while the floor is quite thin, and the roof is hanging the floor with some cables. And so this is when they made the roof, I think it was in Poland, they assembled this roof to be transported to Belgium. But it's actually how the roof looks like today as well. I mean, it's painted. But the roof, when you look from the higher floors of the buildings, you see this eye almost. It's like an eye. And that's because you have the radial fins, but also this beautiful connecting fin that connects both buildings. So it's almost like welded like a ship, like a steel ship. And this is during construction. So when they mounted the big ring between the two buildings, and you see the little cables that hang the floor. And that's, of course, a beautiful face to also see. I think we put that picture to just give you a more idea of how it actually works, because this is how it's then built. We decided to clad the ring on the outside with reflective, polished aluminium, actually. And the inside is curved glass. And this is what you can see. So this material, it reflects the surroundings, but you can see the ceiling. It's a quite busy street, actually. A lot of buses pass under it. And so you see this ring, but it actually becomes like the city. You see people moving through it in that ring. That's actually people that work there, the parliamentaries, going from the building of 1870 to 2010. And that's how it is inside. So you can see there's this ring where you walk, and actually we delivered this project during the pandemic. And it was funny, because that's the time when you could have like these moments where you had to go left and right. And so the bridge was perfect already for the pandemic. Of course, today you can take whatever side you want, but it was funny to open it at that time. And it still works very well today. So yeah, it's a small project, but I think we enjoy doing these kind of projects because we can put a lot of intention in it and still make architecture as we think it should be made today. Okay, another round project. So I promised you only circles and squares today, which is crazy because there were so many in the L croquis, so I can just show them now today to you. So there's this project is a library in Belgium. This is an aerial picture, so funny to see the model. And then this is when it's almost finished. It's the aerial view from the roof. And it's a library in a small town in St. Martens-Latem. It's near Ghent. Ghent is like the third town. It's like Bologna of Belgium. It's the university town of Belgium. And well, this is also a recent picture taken there just like a few days ago. It's in that courtyard that you saw. So there's this big, almost like a house. It's a town that has huge villas. It's like it's the richest commune of Belgium, and they have enormous villas everywhere. And so we were very honored that we could make one of the only public buildings in that town. And so making it into a house was for us quite important, like the biggest living room, the biggest shared living room, let's say, of the town. But this is the town. You can see all the big houses, and it's on the central axis where there's also a small school. And so they needed to replace the old library with a new one, and we designed this circular building that touches the road and that also touches the school, because it's also used by the school. That's on the top side, and somehow inscribed itself by its circularity in a simple way in the context, but also we decided to give it a sloping roof, because all the houses have these sloping roofs, like typical saddle roof, and so we thought, like, who knows, that's a very interesting combination, because it's totally unthinkable to have a cylinder and this sloping roof, but finally it kind of works, we think. Anyway, I'll show you pictures. So these were collages during the competition time. We make often these collages just to show a few aspects of the building, the outside, the inside, the garden inside. It's quite opaque, and at the same time it's quite open and there's of course books, and I think the books are the fundaments of the library still today, and that's, we designed them to hold basically the whole perimeter of the wall. It's even structural. So the bookshelves, they become like the structure of the building. They're all in wood, and they would carry that weird big circular roof that is inclined all around a reading garden, because that's also important. There's this kind of garden inside the library that gives the light inside the heart of the building, and that's the reading garden of the library. So this is the plan, and I'm going to take some water. The plan of the library, and again you can see the circle, but there's also a square, which is half garden, half half something else, and then the books that go around, the books that are actually the fundament, but they make also the space. It's like, you know, probably the Stockholm Library by Asplund. There's also circular reading library room. It's beautiful to see all these books, not straight, but curved. And you see also they become like little fins, and they're the structure that hold up the building. They're literally, the shelves are the wooden structure. It's a wooden structure building, and that goes up. There's a second level above the other side, as you can see here in the section. But the lower parts, it's like 3 meters high. That's where the roof just hits the circle. And that's how it's built today. So you can see it's changed from the collage, where it was very red in brick. But finally we decided to make it just white plastered. And there's a few openings. It has something awkward. Here the landscaping wasn't growing yet, so these are very early pictures just delivered last year. And then there's inside the books that make you, well, move around, let's say, around that space that changes in height also. So here you see where it becomes very high. It's almost like a tent, the roof. And the shelves are hanging between these wooden columns. And the view is always relating to the courtyard. The courtyard has this big art piece, which has the imprint of a Latin text by Cicero saying that when you have a garden in your library, you have everything, which is kind of true. And some are entrance doors, other are actually just the vitrine, you could say, of the library by just showing books. The sloping roof and the facade that is like suddenly inside, very open, and shows the courtyard, this kind of corner inside, the upper level, and this kind of almost an interior, that garden. An interior, the roof that extends to the street, and it has this kind of smaller, like the crematorium section, which makes it like almost like reaching out to the human scale, if you want. Because it's quite a big building, but awkwardly enough, people don't perceive it as big. Only when they enter, they understand the public character of that building. That's the courtyard, and the courtyard can be covered by kind of a tissue that rolls out when there's too much sun. So it becomes this room inside the building. That's the detail of all that. I'm not going to really talk about that. But you see this layering, and the transparency is to the inside. I think that's also a very important decision we took, that there is this very big glass room inside the library that gives all the daylight, and very clear windows to the outside in the circle. At night comes this beautiful window of books, and well, just finished, and we're very happy how that building now, let's say, works in its small town community. And this, I promised Roberto also to show this. This is a project here not far away, Mugello, if I'm saying it right. It's actually Trebbio is the smaller name of where it is. It's in Tuscany, just above Firenze. And it's a project that we won a competition for a few years ago already, but that is still ongoing, and we hope to be able to build it soon in Italy, in Tuscany. Because it's a beautiful site. I think it's a UNESCO site, if I'm not wrong. It's heritage, that's for sure. This is a property or the estate of a very big family that bought this and is now planting olive trees, lots of them, to make, let's say, a very sustainable olive oil agriculture, so like a biodynamic olive oil. And so they need their own olive oil refinery, or how to say, the pressing system, and everything that is surrounding the olive oil production needs a building, and especially when it gets processed into olive oil. And so they asked us to join the competition, and this is actually the estate. This is Castello di Trebbio. It's the first villa of the Medici family, and it's a beautiful area. And it's, of course, not at this castello, but it's a bit further away in the fields. And these fields are so beautiful as well because it's a whole estate. I think it's more than 400 hectares of land in Tuscany. Yeah, this is an old painting of the same estate, with all small. There's small churches, there's working houses. There's, as you know, better than me even. This is a typical but amazing site in Tuscany. And so, but when we were walking there, there was these enormous stones sticking out of the ground, and it was just like laying around everywhere. And we were very intrigued by it. I think, if I'm not wrong, because it's a while ago, it's called albarese, like pieces of stone that they would take out for the agriculture to not be bothered by them, and they would just throw them somewhere. And we were very amazed by them, because somehow we found it extremely inspiring, these stones that were laying all around, big pieces, rocks, basically. And you can see already, like, our design, a circular element on the space they acquired or they reserved for that oil pressing building. And some other sheds that are around, some road, and then of course the olive tree, let's say, fields. And this is the design, and it has some references, I think, to the crematorium as well, as I showed to you today. It's this idea of a roof that is actually also a facade of the project, that is a place that is nature morte, or still live, that is actually part of the site, but then again it's quite abstract as well. And under this roof there's this very pragmatic, industrial, almost like oil pressing building, where you could arrive, put the tractors, put all the big boxes of oil, of olives, and process them immediately into the building. There's storage, there's different levels. You can see, probably, when you see in the section, there's this roof hovering above it, and then there's all the process of olive oil making basically under that roof. And on top of the roof, as you can see, are these stones. The whole building is actually made out of, let's say, architectural concrete, but mixed with granulates of the side. It's a bit of a beige-like color, and that would become actually the entire element that is visible of the building. So it becomes, the roof is first, because it lays on a slope, and so the roof is also in the same slope. It gives a kind of lower profile to the building, and you can go under it. And on top of this roof is a kind of collection of the stones, and the stones, they have the same tint, the same beige tint as what the architectural concrete has. And so they become the same in a way. And the facades of the let's say the square building under it, they're in this undulated concrete together with undulated aluminium facades. So they become like a game of both things. And the edge of the roof, you can see, sticks over of the process. Inside, very pragmatic, let's say, different machines. There's a storage space, and there's like a mezzanine for some offices and more other practical rooms, some refrigerators and so on. And there's on top also a kind of hospitality space, which would be tasting and showing the neighborhood kind of space on that mezzanine. Where you have a stair on the mezzanine, of course, after tasting, you look at this beautiful Trebbio landscape, and you go even on top of the roof to enjoy, let's say, the view on that splendid site. So we're very hopeful to get a permit for this project. It's not so easy in that context, but we're working on it with the family. Still some model pictures. The opened oil pressing building, and then with the roof, with these little dots like in the crematorium that bring in lights from above. Okay, this is the 6th project, so I still have 2 projects. It's a very recent project, and it's a small one, so I mean, I've been showing not huge projects. I will show the end project is a very big one. So, but this one is also just recently finished. It's a house in Sweden. In the middle of Sweden, we have some friends in Belgium, and they have a gallery, and they bought some land here. As you can see, this is a lake on the left side, and on the right side you have a little road with a small community on the top, and then there's a few houses built down there. And they bought some land there exactly at the lake. Well, it's far away from the lake, but it's kind of going up landscape. And there's nothing else. I mean, there's of course a few neighbors, but this is Sweden, the middle of Sweden. And if I say the middle of Sweden, it's really north already. So it's 400 kilometers above Stockholm. So it's this area that has amazing summers, very like snowy and dark winters, and autumn and spring, they're extremely colorful. So all the seasons are really present. And we were asked to build a house, and of course there were some requirements, but this client, they saw the first house that we built in Spain, and she was really like, I want you to do what you really, I mean, please, you have to do something, you're very free, that's what she said. And so we designed this house, not too big, it's 200 square meters. By the way, this is the view from the site in winter or in spring actually, when the snow is like melting. And you see the lake. The lake is amazing. It's called Lake Siljan. And Siljan is it's a lake that is part of a bigger, let's say, circular figure of lakes, because I think 3 million or whenever years ago, a meteorite hit that spot in Sweden, and that made that lake. But it's amazing. So anyway, the house. The house we designed has a slight inclination, and maybe I show you back, towards the road, and it's also moved a bit downhill, so it kind of catches all the right moments of the site. Also escapes a bit the linearity of the neighbors. But also because the roof, and you will see the roof, is also very important, as you've seen in many of the designs before. But first the plan. The plan is a very simple plan. It's almost like opposite to the Spain house. This is a very rational square. And the project is called 25 columns. So 25 columns, it's like a row of 5 and a row of 5. 5 times 5 is 25. And these columns are actually the structural columns of the house. So it's this field of dots, black dots. They're columns of 35 centimeters diameter, and they hold, let's say, the living area. And in the living area, as you can see, there's like 4 rooms, and these rooms are actually 3 bedrooms and a winter garden, and all the rest is like living area. Since the ground goes down a lot, there's a big space under the house, which becomes like pilotis, you know, almost like an area that is just almost framing nature and measuring it with these columns on the same spots coming down. And there's a big stair, as you can see, on the other side of the house, on the lowest side or the highest side, towards the lake. Because the house is, of course, horizontal, and it connects from, let's say, the road side to the entrance to the lower side, and this is how the section looks. And you can see already that the roof is a very important element, because you arrive from the road, you see the roof, and then you go down in the house or under the house on the stair in the back. This is collages as we made them before. For us, the idea of the lake, which is always catching the sun in different ways. It's amazing, the mirror it is, the lake, and the roof, and how they relate. And also to make a fully wooden house. This house is made entirely out of wood, wood solid structure, but also the only other material we used is actually aluminium. It's for the roof and for the window frames. And all the rest is wood. You will see that. And the other collage is looking back from lower on the side, under the house, you see the columns. And these weird things sticking up from the roof. And the plan, as I showed it to you before, is organized in a very, very blunt and straightforward way. So these 25 columns, and there's 4 rooms, and the rooms themselves are made out of glass. So all of the bedrooms are glass bedrooms standing in the same glass perimeter that makes the interior of the house. And so it makes this kind of very small composition of different spaces that work together and that work apart depending on how you open or close the glass or the curtains. And the roof, as a last plan, is also very important, where you can see there's a solar deck where you can go up and catch some sun. It's a very Scandinavian thing. You're protected from the road by this standing up screen, and there's a light well that is in the middle of the plan with another little roof standing open. Another collage as we made them at the time. Of course, the real pictures are better, I would say, or different. So this is the built work, and you can see how the house, this is when you arrive, and these are pictures from just when it was finished, so nothing really, no nature yet, but it's coming, and of course it would be like how it is around there. But what is super beautiful, and again, like in the Trebbio project, these rocks, because Sweden is built on granite soil, and everywhere there's the granite sticking up out of nature. So there's this soft nature everywhere, it's beautiful, but then suddenly this extremely big rocks stick out. So that we kept exactly how it is, and that became also just the ground and how it is continued under the house. As you can see here, these enormous rocks, they become also kind of a landscape. Then the columns, so 25 wooden columns, almost like trees, stick through the house. So they're like massive 35 centimeter round columns that go, in the highest one, which you see on the right side here, is 8 meters high and sticks in one go from the ground to the roof of the house. Here the house touches the earth, let's say it's the highest point of the landscape. Here you have this view of over the lake, and you can see, and that's very important, I think, where the rooms are, the 4 rooms, you see these enormous profiles, and that's actually like pavilions standing in that plan. They become also, they pop out and they make the facade of the rooms where you can open them. So they are sliding windows, so they have big frames. And that, plus the roof, make this kind of a other reading of the house. From below, with the stair, connecting, let's say, the highest point over the diagonal to the lowest column. The same views all the time. It's a very small house. And under the house, there's space that is still to be developed, but it's just bare and it's beautiful. It's just what it is. And you can see also the massive wooden plates of the structure. And inside that column that just continues, becomes also almost like, yeah, like I said, like a tree. It's an abstract tree. It's as thick almost as a tree. Pine trees that are growing everywhere there. And they are super soft. The floor is wood, the ceiling is wood, and then there is this kind of weird, almost like mirroring boxes standing in there that make you be able to live actually on quite a small surface in that enormously generous house. With a view, of course, to the lake. This is the living area between two boxes. This is the winter garden where you have the table, where you go up and down from the outside on that stair. The perspective between the rooms, here you can see that these profiles, they just run inside. And this is looking from the winter garden over the kitchen to two rooms and to the entrance door, which is there. To end up here again with that view. I mean, there's a whole section we can discuss, but it's maybe not the time here. But this, how to build a wooden house that is actually isolated, and it was a whole puzzle. And although things seem very obvious and direct in this design, this was a fight with our Swedish contractors. But we managed, and we're very happy with the result. And this is the roof in aluminium decking, overlooking, again, the lake. Well, if you're up to it, I will show you this last project. It's in Brussels, where our office is from, or where we are based. And it's we actually, today we work on a very big media building in Switzerland, in Lausanne. This is in El Croquis number 1, I mean the project. It will be finished, I think, in 1.5 years. It will be, well, people of the media, RTS, Radio Télévision Suisse, will go in there. This is actually a competition we won 4 years ago, and it's for the Belgian radio and television headquarters. So it's the Flemish side. You probably all know that we have two pieces of Belgium. There's the Flemish-speaking part, and there's the French-speaking part. But all their headquarters are in Brussels. And this is the headquarters of the Flemish-speaking television. It's called VRT, Vlaamse Radio en Televisie. And we won a competition for that building. It's a building that more or less has 2,000 people working in it, so it's a very big project. And it's also, well, it's an institute with an enormous history in Belgium, as anywhere else. Media today, it became more and more important even, and it became more and more ephemeral also. We all have screens with us, and we read the news or watch shows, but who's actually making all this? And this content, and well, there's a building, there's a place, there's an institution, and that's in this case the new building for that place. Maybe this is a good picture to explain you some context, because there's a big avenue, the second ring of Brussels running here. Here you can see the E40, that's the very big highway going into Brussels, to the center. And then this patch in the middle, that whole area, it's like, I think 7 hectares of land is part of that media company. So it's an enormous site in Brussels. And that site will become actually developed in the future, because today there's this 60s building standing there. You see mostly on the left side, you see this big cluster of buildings. That's the media headquarters today. There's a big tower next to it with satellites on top. That's the media tower. It's very known in Brussels. And that will all be replaced by that white spot, because in the 60s they needed enormous machinery around media, but today everything got smaller and got more efficient, and so they can do the same with that amount of building the white spot, as you can see it there. So, and then when the white spot is built, this whole area will be developed and become a park, a public park. Today it's a private garden, let's say. And so it's a whole neighborhood project that will accumulate a piece of city around it and a park for the people of Brussels. This is a picture of today. So today, if you want to go to the Flemish National Radio and Television and Media Building, this is the building. It's this 1960s building, I think it's 300 meters long, a very thin slab with all windows, like little windows, and enormous corridors. It's insane. And then there's this concrete tower with the satellites. And so the concrete tower is 98 meters high. And then in front you see the landscape of Brussels, the kind of mess of the roofs of what the neighborhood looks like. But of course, here you're standing on top of the tower and you see still these big machine-like studio buildings in front. And then you see the big forest in the back. And actually there in the middle between the studios and the forest is the new site of the new media building. So they can build it, keep on working, and once it's finished, they can move from the big buildings to the more compact and more efficient building in there. You can see it here. Actually, this is the master plan. And if you look well, you don't see the old buildings anymore, but you see the new neighborhood, the park on the right. There's another building for media on the lower part. There's the tower that is still going to be preserved on the left side in the section below. And then there on top, the square is actually the new project as we propose it for the VRT today. And the square, just to give you an idea of size, so the tower is 98 meters high. The square is the same, if you would flip the tower, it's the same size. So it's 100 meter by 100 meter, the size of the square. So it's 2 football fields, maybe easier to understand it like that. 2 football fields big, one next to the other, in plan. But it's not only a square, and maybe that's important to say because we're not only making squares and circles. This is a building that is actually, the base of it is an octagon, and it negotiates with its context, with the landscape around it. It's this most public part of the building is this octagonal, multifaceted figure that actually tries to be inside the site, and you can see the site is bigger. We actually managed to not destroy these pieces of forest on our site and make it extremely compact. And together with Bas Smets, the landscape architect in Belgium, we made these kind of smaller corners that touch the building and where these facets address each other. And they go inside, outside. So you have an entrance square, which you can see in red. There's a very big logistical area there below. There's a garden, private for the employees. There's a public garden next to the restaurant. And all these facets, they orientate themselves to it, but also to the neighbors, to the new developments, to the forest, and to the other buildings around there. And this is the model as we made it during the competition. So I'll show you mainly competition documents now. Because actually, people would say this is the backside, but this is not looking like a backside because this is a logistic site, but we really wanted that this building doesn't have any backside. So no backsides, it's just a front side like any other side. This is towards the forest where you have the restaurant. This is towards the media square. There's a big media square coming there in the middle of the park. And this is towards the other side, towards the west, let's say. So it's this multifaceted figure underneath this octagon, and on top there's this box, almost like a pizza box. And that's a floor where media is created. This is an image we made during the competition, but you can see actually the game of, let's say, the octagon versus the square. 2 figures one, you could say, works with hardware, the hardware of the institute. You can see big studios inside the heart of the building. There's the typical backstage areas, there's the loges, there's the VIP rooms, and there's a whole area with event rooms and visitor centers in the other side. So this whole idea of backstage, front stage is very much present in the building, an enormous logistical part. And then on top, you could say, there's the ateliers, the creation, it's almost like a factory of media, where everybody, all the stations, there's, I think, 7 TV stations, there's more than 10 radio stations, there's multiple, media stations. It's many things, and they all work together in this building. And here you can see how it is, this kind of rather horizontal building, not like a high-rise in which people are segregated, but the idea is to, on these 2 football fields, to work all together. 2,000 people can work all together in that area. This is the restaurant side, logistical side. And I quickly go over these spaces. We don't need to see them all, but just to give you an idea, the entrance, you go in, the plan, the studios, you can see that actually the heart of the building is almost dark because it's so big, but there the dark spaces need to be, the studios and the big event rooms. And then it grows towards the outside where it becomes more transparent, more public, more livable. With double height spaces, entrance areas, or big events that happen there, views on the city. And again, that relation with the park that is actually preserved because of this very small footprint we give it. Still, a lot is built underground. There's a lot of parkings, and there's this enormous access going under it, also to show that these studios, they're public part of the building. And on the other side, there's this logistics happening with big trucks that can enter, as you can see here again. And they have these enormous spaces for logistics to happen on the backstage side of the building. And then on top, and you could say we saw a lot of hardware. This is more software, more light. There's more light literally, but it's more lightweight as well. And there's 5 patios that perforate that 2 football field-like floor plan. And there's areas where you can circulate, which are almost like city areas. There are metaphors like we have the boulevard, you have side streets, east-west, north-south. It's really like a city with different neighborhoods and different gardens. So big it is as a building. And there's just stairs that connect you from the ground floor up to it, so everybody takes the stair basically and lives or creates or makes or does things around these patios, overlooking also, of course, the rest of Brussels. With big studios, the new studios are also on that floor. And they have this, typical workplaces around the big patios that have these stepping patios that are cores, and so there's like 5 of them. Again, there we worked with a landscape architect to make them all different, so you have orientation in this enormous area of landscape offices. And this, well, it's a bit of a bad quality. This is a BIM model drawing of the same axonometrical views as I showed in the beginning, and it's all the ducts of air handling of each of the parts of the building. And I don't know, why I want to show this is, of course, because we're building this today, the construction is going on, and I was so amazed by the fact that just with the ducts of the building you could say or show the same principle as it is an architectural plan. So today these are pictures of today or not so long ago of the building site. Of course, lots of has to be built, and we're still in the base, which is a mineral construction, where we go up into the field, the box, then it's all metallic work, so it's much lighter. And so it is also the idea of kind of public, very massive and solid base, plus, and these are facade tests, plus a very lightweight facades on the box on top and structural system as well. The same painting where we started to end with in our office. Thank you.
Question, anything from the public?
No, of course,
so
of
this
course.
way,
Yeah, if it's in Italian, it's okay.
maybe you, I don't know if you need to change the chat.
I will see.
Grazie David. Un racconto deciso, chiaro, generoso, che riesco a sintetizzare in una sola parola, come avevo accennato prima, tenendo insieme eccezionale, normale, luoghi comuni e poesia, per cui oggi in inglese si direbbe super normal, perché rendere semplice ciò che è complesso è un'arte. E mi piace anche la sfida di lavorare sulla quadratura del cerchio. Poi, visto che frequenti la Toscana, ovviamente hai dei buoni esempi, abbiamo dei buoni esempi, e questo un po' è la cifra del loro lavoro se lo guardiamo solo attraverso le piante. Se voi andate nel loro sito internet ci sono tante piante, ma oggi noi che siamo stati qui più di un'ora a capire il loro lavoro abbiamo colto anche il ruolo della sezione, the section of building, per come si relaziona col suolo e con il cielo, perché i loro progetti abbiamo avuto, almeno io ho apprezzato questa cura nel scegliere la posizione in lotti piuttosto liberi, diciamo con spazio attorno, proprio per creare questa relazione tra il suolo e l'interno, e anche come lavorare con la luce zenitale per illuminare certi spazi, questo in sezione. Invece nella parte orizzontale questa fortissima relazione tra interno e esterno con una grande vivibilità dall'interno verso l'esterno. Prima il penultimo progetto, la villa verso il lago, dai disegni, dai render, dai collage, sono subito volato a San Paolo a pensare alla casa d'Uvidro di Lina Bobardi, no? Come concezione, edificio sollevato con una scala, piano libero, però questo devo dire che è un 2.0, 4.0, chiamiamolo come vogliamo, ma poi le immagini che ci ha mostrato dentro, per fuori, danno veramente, oltre alla dignità degli spazi, una grandissima qualità. Quindi una grande cura e un tema che poi noi abbiamo sempre, penso anche recentemente, abbiamo fatto altre attività, la Casa del Mantegna a Mantova, se pensiamo sempre alla relazione del cerchio e del quadrato. Quindi è una bellissima sfida, complimenti, soprattutto il fattore generazionale è veramente promettente, perché come diceva Louis Kahn si diventa architetti a 50 anni, qua siamo ampiamente in vantaggio rispetto a questa teoria. Abbiamo anche diversi studenti dall'Università di Ferrara, quindi sarebbe anche interessante così capire se c'è qualche domanda, architetti e non. Una mano alzata, due addirittura, grande. C'è il microfono. Potete fare la domanda in italiano, lui ha le cuffie in inglese, quindi come preferite.
Hi. First of all, thank you for these short lessons that we have seen. My question is, once that you seen to the site, to the project site, where did you take inspiration for that project that you made?
where do we get the inspiration? Well, it's hard. I mean, to answer, it's a very fundamental question, of course. Where does inspiration come in general from? I think you have to understand that we have an office that's been working for more than 20 years now. Kirsten and me, literally, we started working immediately after university together. So I would, I know there are students present from the University of Bologna. I would really encourage everybody here to start thinking and making architecture as for yourself as soon as you can. Because I think where do we get the inspiration? That comes back to how do we work, and how do we work is actually, well, Kirsten Geers, who is not here, and actually our name is not KGDVS, but it's Office Kirsten Geers, David van Severen. I know why they make it shorter, because it's always too long to fit on one presentation or whatever. But to just mention Kirsten here is important, because both of us, we are very different persons, but we work very well together. We have a complementarity, if you want, on how to think architecture, and I think each of us, and that's from the beginning on, we challenge each other with fascinations, with inspirations, with many ideas and knowledge also about architecture, and how to bring that in a conversation, and that conversation that goes around plans, sections, collages, as you've seen, models. And I think these tools of architecture, they're essential. And so by now we have an office of more than 40 people, but we've always worked like this, and we still work like that. So it's very important to create and to test, and we have a big, for instance, a big model atelier in our studio, just to be able to test things, and we still sketch. And as you've seen in the last project, of course, there's new technologies entering, like renders, etc. But it's still these very basic things like a drawing, a model, a plan, a section. We think they're essential because there are tools of discussing architecture, and that's how Kirsten and me, and by now many other people around us, work together. And if you talk about inspiration, I think, you know, I show a bit of art. I think we are very inspired by abstract art. You saw the painting in the end. Actually, it's still there. Piece of blue. Matt Mulligan, American artists after the 50s. Today, even art today, what does it mean? It puts a lot of questions, and these questions are very abstract in many cases, but they have a lot of emotion as well. And I think both abstraction and emotion, they're really parts of our inspiration of how we think, how we want to make architecture.
Okay. First of all, it was a very impressive presentation. And my question is, which kind of difficulties you faced you afford when you do your project, like combining these shapes, circle and squares?
Sorry, can you repeat, please?
My question is, like, which kind of difficulties you faced doing your projects?
Do you understand? We don't understand you, sorry. But maybe in Italian I can do.
Chiedevo nel senso che tipo di difficoltà incontrate mentre fate i vostri progetti, tipo mettendo il cerchio, il quadrato tutto insieme, se incontrate qualche difficoltà facendo quel lavoro.
Of course. I mean, if you talk about difficulties in making it for real, I think you have a lot of examples here in Italy on this kind of two shapes, circles and squares. Basically, almost each of the Palladian works is like that, or churches. I mean, name it. It's all over the place in Italy. So I don't think it's a new invention. Let's say it like that. We didn't invent that squaring the circle for sure. And in a way, that's also important to say, because we are not, making architecture in a vacuum. We are part of history. We are part of the future, but we are also part of the past. So in a way, for us, this is all the same. And I think it's important that we can just work with all the tools we have from history, from the future, from today, and work with these. So why I'm saying that is that each of these architects that has been working in the Renaissance times had also their own challenges, and how to make things work and perfect and build things. I think it's a whole level of making architecture which is always extremely challenging, because what you have to know, I think, is that there is this perfect idea, and then there's reality, or a dream and a reality, and you have to somehow be able to marry them. And maybe the title of today, Squaring the Circles, which is like trying to do the impossible, is the best description of our profession, because it's really hard. But doing that, you can only almost like tangentially approach what you think is really that ideal dream, but you have to always realize that it's never fully possible. But if you realize that, then actually it becomes even more beautiful. Why I'm saying that is that the reality of building is something so complex and so many forces. So when your ideas are actually very strong, you manage to set aside all kinds of, let's say, unimportant elements that are not crucial or essential to your project. And with these strong ideas, and I bring back the idea of the collage, the perspective, these are ideas, they are not just images, they're not like snapshots, they're rather ideas that you show. The model is the same, the model cannot be a reality because it's a model, but it shows an idea. The plan, you can say the same. So I'm just saying that you need to bring all these ideas in these architectural tools, and they speak, and they somehow make you able to challenge each of these difficulties or questions or tasks that come along. And that's also building a project and making it become real.
Thank you, David. Thank you for this presentation. Thank you for the insights of your practice and presenting these great projects. I have a question regarding your synthetic process and also the concept of typology. So we saw that in more and more of your projects, I think in all of them, having studied also the project like from the first El Croquis, you use these repeating elements like the square, the circle, and then you have some similar layouts and archetypal deep structures, the stoa, the courtyard, the garden, and etc., and the threshold. So I'm very, very curious in which part of your synthetic process the typology has an impact. So do you start by knowing the layout that you will follow, the typological layout that you will follow, or during the synthetic process, you use one of the typological layouts to help you to crystallize the composition and move forward? Thank you.
Well, thank you for that question. It's interesting and intelligent remark, but I would say typology and design, they blur in the sense that the process of, let's say, installing ideas comes from all sides, honestly, and it's a bit related to the first question, I have the feeling, that these typologies are actually indeed, you could say, historical facts, but ideas, they can be of today, and they are not necessarily contrary or something. So it's by combining, it's almost like sampling, if you want to say it with a fancy word, or even mixing it, that it becomes something new. And I think it's important to say that, especially in a context of a country with a lot of architecture history, that this history is important, but it cannot be the only source. I guess that's why I mentioned art before, which is globally different in any continent. That is a more free, if you want to say it like that, form of cultural production than an architecture, but they're very related. And I think if you bring that plus, I think, a set of very talented ideas of making architecture, then you have enough. And I think getting down to the essence of what you actually want to say and what to do with a certain project, that transcend typology, transcend use, transcend functionality, but it's ultimately always about some kind of essential feeling of how humans move in and exist within in the world and in architecture. So it's a very, I know, vague answer, but at the same time I think there's no real formula for this. You have to be able to feel it, that it goes in the right direction.
The last one. Okay.
Grazie mille. Io avevo una curiosità più di carattere manageriale rispetto a... Abbiamo sentito molti interventi, cioè molte domande, anche molte considerazioni di carattere compositivo. La mia invece era una curiosità appunto che verteva sulla... su come abbiamo capito che i concorsi hanno avuto un ruolo importante. Diceva che molti lavori nascono da concorsi, da competizioni di questo genere, mentre altri lavori, ad esempio la villa singola per privati, immagino che arrivino da un'attività, da crediti sicuramente raggiunti col tempo. Siete diventati uno studio di 40 persone, comunque affermato, però nell'arco di 20 anni probabilmente ci saranno stati dei momenti che avranno creato questi scatti, no? Ad esempio una villa in mezzo alla foresta, come quella in Spagna, la prima che abbiamo visto, di forma circolare, avere una commissione di questo genere è abbastanza singolare, perlomeno. Quindi chiedevamo come siete arrivati ad avere questo tipo di incarichi molto importanti nell'arco di un tempo breve, insomma.
I like the question. Well, it's not such a short time. It's 20 years. It's actually 22 years by now. We are working together. So that's first thing. I think also maybe, and I understood in the introduction, there's also more and more, let's say, Belgian architecture becomes more and more visually present in the world. and I think we are part of that wave. We are lucky to be part of it, but we also made it happen. And I think, just to give you an idea, and I think it's similar in Italy, by the way, is that Belgians, there's a saying, that every Belgian is born with a brick in its stomach. So, because every Belgian one day in his life will build a house, his single family house. So, and this is, it's true, it's a very big tradition in Belgium, and everybody wants to build something one day. So there's a lot of small work, small commissions around in Belgium, and not only architecture, but also in design. Belgium is very known also for craftsmanship in design and so on, and therefore I will compare it to the north of Italy in a way. Which is also flat and many artisans. It's a bit similar, but it gives you a very good context, I would say, if you are creative, to make things happen, to start to do your first smaller projects and to work immediately in your direct context with people you know, and then make it happen. And of course, this together with the culture that is established in Belgium 20 years ago of there's competitions that are organized by the state, by the communes, there's a big organization now that is making architecture more as a public profession. So it gives you, and smaller and younger practices, a lot of chances to do small commissions, small competitions, and inscribe. And so that's an important element as well, to be part of that culture, of that growing culture in Belgium. On the other hand, and that's very important to mention from our side, we never thought ourselves as being a Belgian office. We are actually more, if you want to say, like European. We are everywhere, teaching in Switzerland, in the States, in Japan, it's been said. We were teaching in France. I mean, it's something that is important for us, because there's a small but very interesting architectural community that is knowing all each other, and they somehow, we share a language of today in which we can speak to each other about architecture. And this happens over these institutions, so we teach together, we meet each other, and that's making another network. And then maybe third, but not least, is also, of course, your network of, if you now say the private clients. The Villa in Sweden is people that are art, they have an art gallery, they want to make a building in Sweden, they knew about the house in Spain, so they contacted us, and at the same time they're also actually quite good friends. The house in Spain, that was through that international community, because the architects who built the first house in Spain, they are from Chile, and they know our work, like Roberto knows our work, because of this community, and they advised our practice to the client for Spain. So this is also how it goes. So it's many layers together that make it possible, and then of course you still have to make a good project. That's the last important part, of course.
Grazie a tutto il nostro pubblico, grazie David, grazie ancora, buona serata.